Take a slow breath before you hear this, because this is not the kind of message that arrives when everything is calm. This is the kind of message that comes after silence has done too much damage, after someone has sat alone with the truth for longer than they could admit, after pride has become heavy, after distance has stopped feeling safe and started feeling like loss. There is someone connected to you who has been carrying more than they have shown. And no, they did not simply forget you. They did not wake up one morning and become cold. They did not move on as easily as their silence may have made it seem. What happened was quieter than that. They buried what they felt because they did not know how to face it. They pushed it down because feeling it honestly would have forced them to make a choice. And for a long time, avoiding the choice felt easier than risking the truth. But emotions do not disappear just because someone refuses to speak them. They wait. They sit beneath the surface. They follow a person into quiet rooms, into late nights, into moments where the phone is in their hand, but no message is sent. And eventually, what was buried begins to rise. That is what is happening now. Something inside them has shifted. Maybe it was something small. Maybe they heard your name. Maybe they saw something that reminded them of you. Maybe they opened their phone and realized there was no longer a reason for you to be there. Maybe they tried to distract themselves with other people, other conversations, other noise, and still felt the emptiness underneath it all. Whatever triggered it, the result was the same. They suddenly felt the weight of your absence, not as an idea, not as a passing thought, but as something real. The kind of realization that comes late at night when everything is quiet and there is nothing left to hide behind. They are beginning to understand that they may have taken too long. That thought has shaken them more than they expected, because for a long time they believed time was still available. They believed your patience would remain where they left it. They believed your care would keep waiting quietly in the background while they figured themselves out. But now they can feel something different. You are not standing in the same place anymore, and that is what frightens them. If this message is already touching something you have been feeling, stay with it, because the deeper truth is not just that they miss you. The deeper truth is that they are finally seeing what their silence cost them. They remember more than they admit. They remember the way you listened, not the casual kind of listening people give when they are waiting for their turn to speak. You listened in a way that made them feel understood without having to explain every scar. They remember your patience, your softness, your effort, the way you kept trying to understand them even when they made themselves hard to reach. They remember how you showed up, and now, in the quiet space where you used to be, they are beginning to feel the difference between being loved and merely being accompanied. That difference hurts, because not everyone sees you clearly. Not everyone can sit with your silence and still understand what you mean. Not everyone can hold space without turning it into control. Not everyone can care without demanding that you become smaller. You gave them something rare, and because it was rare, they should have protected it. But they did not. They allowed fear to make decisions that love should have made. They allowed pride to speak where honesty was needed. They allowed silence to become an answer, even when their heart was saying something else. And now they are living with the result. This is where you need to be careful. Their urgency does not automatically mean they are ready. Sometimes people become urgent only when they realize they are losing access to what once made them feel safe. Sometimes they panic when the door starts closing, but panic is not the same as growth. Fear of losing someone is not the same as knowing how to love them properly. That is the part you must not ignore. They may feel regret. They may miss you. They may want to reach out. They may replay every old conversation and every moment they handled badly. but regret alone does not rebuild trust. A person can miss you deeply and still not know how to show up consistently. A person can love you in their own broken way and still hurt you through avoidance. A person can want you back and still be unprepared to meet you with the honesty you deserved from the beginning. So listen to the message, but do not lose yourself inside it, because what matters now is not only what they feel. What matters now is what they are willing to do with what they feel. They are beginning to see that doing nothing was still a choice. Staying silent was a choice. Letting you wonder was a choice. Leaving you to carry the emotional weight alone was a choice. At the time, they may have told themselves they were confused. They may have said they needed space. They may have convinced themselves that silence was better than saying the wrong thing. But silence also speaks, and sometimes it wounds more deeply than cruel words, because silence leaves the other person trapped in questions. You are left trying to read energy, trying to understand distance, trying to make sense of mixed signals, trying to protect your heart, while still hoping they would finally become honest. That is exhausting. And somewhere along the way, something inside you changed. You stopped asking the same questions. You stopped chasing clarity from someone who kept hiding inside confusion. You stopped explaining your worth. You stopped trying to make them see what should have been obvious. At first, maybe even you did not notice the change. It did not arrive with drama. You did not wake up one morning completely healed. You simply became tired of bleeding quietly for someone who would not even admit they were holding the knife. So you pulled back, not out of revenge, out of survival. And they felt it. They may not have said anything, but they felt it. They felt the way your energy changed, the way your replies became shorter, the way your silence became calmer, the way your presence no longer reached toward them with the same openness. That unsettled them, because before, your silence felt temporary. Now it feels different. Before, they could assume you were hurt, but still waiting. Now they are not sure, and that uncertainty is doing something to them. It is forcing them to face a truth they avoided for a long time. Your love was not a permanent shelter they could return to whenever they felt ready. You are a person. You have limits. You have a heart that can grow tired. You have a soul that eventually chooses peace over confusion. And now that you are no longer moving around their uncertainty, they are beginning to feel the loss of your devotion. This is why their emotions are restless. Part of them wants to reach out. Part of them is afraid. They imagine writing the message. They imagine saying the words. They imagine apologizing without hiding behind excuses. But then fear enters the room. What if it is too late? What if you no longer care the same way? What if you have already accepted the ending? What if they finally open their heart and you do not open the door? So they hesitate. They write messages in their mind and never send them. They replay conversations that never happen. They think of your face, your voice, your presence, and then talk themselves out of reaching forward. This is the strange prison they are in now. They are not peaceful without you, but they are not brave enough yet to come toward you properly. That is why you may feel their energy around you even while nothing is happening on the surface. Because silence does not always mean absence. Sometimes silence is full of things a person doesn't have the courage to say. If you have felt this shift, you are not imagining everything. There is a difference between fantasy and intuition. Fantasy tries to force a story. Intuition notices what has changed. And something has changed here. They are looking at you differently now. Not because you begged them to. Not because you forced them to understand, but because your withdrawal became the mirror they could no longer avoid. When you were fully present, they did not see the full value of your presence. Now that you are not as available, they feel the space you left behind. That space is teaching them. It is teaching them what comfort used to feel like. It is teaching them what safety used to feel like. It is teaching them what they failed to protect. But this teaching comes late, and late lessons always carry pain. They are thinking about moments they once dismissed as small. The time you checked on them when nobody else noticed. The time you stayed calm even when they became distant. The time you tried to understand instead of accuse. The time you gave them another chance to be honest. The time you waited for words that never came. These memories do not feel small now. They feel heavy, because memory changes shape when regret enters it. What once looked ordinary suddenly becomes precious. What once felt available suddenly feels lost. What once seemed patient now looks like love they failed to honor. And this is where the emotional pressure grows. They know they cannot simply return with a casual message and expect everything to become what it was. They know something has changed in you. They know you are not waiting to be convinced by beautiful words anymore. You are watching for consistency. You are watching for maturity. You are watching for proof. And that scares them, because proof requires more than emotion. It requires action. It requires humility. It requires accountability. It requires the kind of honesty they avoided when it mattered most. They may want the closeness back, but wanting is easy. Holding it with care is harder. They may want your warmth again, but warmth is not something a person is entitled to after leaving you cold. They may want forgiveness, but forgiveness is not a shortcut around responsibility. This is why they are stuck between desire and fear. They want to come forward, but they know coming forward means facing the full truth of what they did and what they failed to do. They cannot return as the same person and expect a different outcome. Deep down, they know that. And that is why the silence feels charged, not empty, charged. There is guilt in it. There is longing in it. There is fear in it. There is a confession forming inside them, even if they have not spoken it yet. If they could speak without pride, they would probably say they are sorry for making you feel alone in something that involved both of you. They would say they should have been honest sooner. They would say they did not understand how much damage silence could do. They would say they thought they had more time. They would say they were scared, but fear does not erase impact. That is the truth they are learning. Being scared may explain why someone acted the way they did, but it does not automatically heal the person who was hurt by those actions. And you were hurt, maybe quietly, maybe privately, maybe in ways they never fully saw. You had to carry confusion that was not yours. You had to make peace with unanswered questions. You had to teach yourself not to wait by the door of someone else's uncertainty. That kind of healing changes a person. It softens some parts and strengthens others. It makes you less available to emotional chaos. It teaches you the difference between love and attachment. It teaches you that missing someone does not always mean you should return. It teaches you that peace can feel unfamiliar at first, especially when you are used to fighting for connection. And now they are sensing that peace in you. That is what scares them most. Not anger, not sadness. Peace. Because anger can still be engaged with. Sadness can still be comforted. But peace means you have started accepting reality without needing them to change it. Peace means you may no longer be waiting for an explanation. Peace means you have begun coming home to yourself. And when someone who depended on your emotional availability feels you coming home to yourself, they panic, because they understand that they are no longer the center of your emotional world. That is the shift. That is the part they cannot control. They cannot pull you back with mixed signals the way they may have before. They cannot rely on your old softness without earning your trust again. They cannot assume your heart will keep making room for their confusion. You have changed the rules by choosing yourself, quietly, powerfully, without needing to announce it. And now they are standing outside the emotional place they once had access to, wondering whether they will ever be allowed back in. But remember this, you are not cruel for having boundaries. You are not cold for becoming calm. You are not wrong for needing more than late regret. You are not heartless because you stopped chasing someone who kept stepping away. You are allowed to protect the peace it took you so long to build. They may be waking up now, but you were awake during the pain. You were awake during the waiting. You were awake during the unanswered nights. You were awake when they were hiding. So, do not let their sudden awareness erase the journey you had to survive. There is a difference between someone realizing your value and someone being ready to value you properly. That difference matters. A person can realize they lost something beautiful and still not know how to care for it if it returns. So if they come back, listen with your eyes open. Listen to the apology, but watch the behavior. Listen to the words, but watch the consistency. Listen to the emotion, but watch whether accountability is present. Do they blame timing? Do they blame fear? Do they blame circumstances? Or do they finally say, clearly and without escape, I hurt you. I avoided the truth. I should have done better. That is where real change begins. Not in dramatic messages, not in emotional confessions, not in late-night longing. Real change begins when someone stops protecting their ego and starts protecting the bond. Until then, be careful, because your heart is not a place for someone to visit only when loneliness becomes loud. Your love is not an emergency shelter for someone who ignored the warnings. Your patience is not endless, and your forgiveness, if it comes, should come from truth, not pressure, not guilt, not the fear of losing them again. You have already learned what it feels like to abandon yourself for connection. Do not repeat that lesson. This moment is not asking you to hate them. It is not asking you to close your heart forever. It is asking you to stay awake, to see the full picture. Yes, they may still feel something real. Yes, they may be struggling with regret. Yes, they may be afraid of losing you permanently. But the question is not only whether their feelings are real. The question is whether their actions can become real too. Because feelings without courage create confusion. Feelings without honesty create pain. Feelings without consistency become another beautiful trap. You do not need another trap. You need truth. You need peace. You need someone who does not make you beg for emotional clarity. And if they are becoming that person, time will show it. Not one message, not one apology, not one emotional night. Time, consistency, repeated effort, the willingness to stand where they once ran away. That is what matters now. They are feeling the pressure of a closing door, but you are not responsible for rescuing them from the consequences of their own delay. That may sound hard, but it is honest. They had chances, they had moments, they had openings, they had your patience, and now they are learning that love does not remain unchanged when it is neglected. Love can be real and still become tired. Love can be deep and still choose distance. Love can remember and still refuse to return to the same pain. That is maturity. That is self-respect. That is the part of you they did not expect to meet. They expected the old you, the one who tried harder, the one who explained more, the one who waited longer, the one who kept searching for meaning inside their silence. But that version of you had to grow, and growth sometimes looks like quiet withdrawal. Growth sometimes looks like not replying immediately. Growth sometimes looks like letting someone sit with the discomfort they created. Growth sometimes looks like saying nothing because your peace is finally louder than your need for answers. They feel that. They feel the distance. They feel that the emotional thread between you has changed tension. It has not necessarily disappeared, but it is no longer in their hands the way it once was. And this is forcing them inward. For the first time, they are not only asking, "Do I miss this person?" They are asking, "What kind of person was I when they needed me?" That question is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. It removes the pretty story they may have told themselves. It shows them that their fear did not only protect them, it hurt someone who cared. It hurt you, and now they have to sit with that. This is the part of regret that people rarely talk about. Regret is not only missing someone. Regret is meeting the version of yourself that caused the loss. It is looking back and realizing you were not as innocent as you wanted to believe. It is seeing the moments where honesty was possible but avoided. It is remembering the person who loved you and realizing you made them feel unsure, unseen, or unwanted. That kind of regret cuts deeply, and that is where they are now. They may try to distract themselves. They may act normal. They may continue posting, working, laughing, moving through the day. But underneath all of that, something keeps returning. Your absence, your silence, your change, your peace. They keep noticing it, and every time they notice it, they feel the same question pressing harder. Is it too late? That question can become a doorway or a prison. If they use it as a doorway, they will grow. They will become honest. They will come forward with humility, not entitlement. If they use it as a prison, they will keep watching from a distance, hoping somehow life fixes what only courage can face. That choice belongs to them, not you. Your choice is different. Your choice is whether you remain loyal to your own healing, whether you trust what you have learned, whether you allow yourself to want love without accepting confusion as the price, because you can care about them and still choose yourself. You can miss them and still need proof. You can understand their fear and still refuse to be hurt by it again. That is not bitterness. That is wisdom. And maybe that is what this whole connection was teaching you. Not just that someone could love you silently, but that silent love is not enough. Not when your heart needs presence. Not when your nervous system needs safety. Not when your soul needs someone who can meet you in truth. Love that hides may be intense, but love that shows up is what heals. Remember that. They may be feeling everything now, but you needed them to feel it when it mattered. You needed them to speak before the silence became a wound. You needed them to choose courage before distance became familiar. You needed them to understand your value before absence became the teacher. Now they are learning, but you are not required to stand still while they learn. If they return, let them return correctly. Let them come with clarity. Let them come with ownership. Let them come with patience for the hurt they caused. Let them come prepared to rebuild, not just reclaim. Because you are not something to reclaim. You are someone to respect. There is a difference. They do not get to come back only because they miss the way you loved them. They must be ready to love you in a way that no longer costs you your peace. That is the standard now. And if they cannot meet it, then their regret belongs to them, not you. You have already done enough emotional labor for two people. You have already tried to understand what they would not explain. You have already waited in places where you should have been met. Now the burden is not yours to carry. Let their silence teach them. Let their regret mature them. Let their fear either become courage or become the final proof that they were not ready. But do not shrink yourself again. Do not become available to confusion just because it arrives wearing the face of love. Do not mistake intensity for transformation. And do not forget how long it took you to find yourself again. This is not the end of the story, unless you choose it to be. But it is the end of the old pattern, the pattern where they hide and you reach, the pattern where they hesitate and you wait, the pattern where they give half-truths and you build whole hopes around them. That pattern is over, and they can feel it. That is why the urgency inside them is growing. That is why their thoughts keep circling back to you. That is why your calm feels louder than your pain ever did, because you are no longer asking them to choose you. You are choosing yourself, and that changes everything. If they are meant to meet you again, they will have to meet the version of you who no longer abandons herself or himself for love. They will have to meet the version of you who listens, but also observes. The version who forgives only when it feels true. The version who understands, but does not excuse everything. The version who loves deeply, but no longer loses themselves in another person's fear. That version of you is powerful, and maybe that is why this whole thing feels different now, because the connection may still exist, but your relationship with yourself has changed. You are not waiting in the same way. You are not hurting in the same way. You are not hoping blindly in the same way. And they know it. They may not know how to name it, but they feel it. They feel that something sacred was mishandled. They feel that something gentle was taken for granted. They feel that someone who once gave them emotional safety is no longer standing unprotected in front of them. And that realization is breaking through their defenses, slowly, painfully, honestly. But again, their awakening is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to remain clear. If they speak, listen. If they apologize, receive it only as far as your heart honestly allows. If they change, let time reveal it. And if they remain silent, let that be an answer too. Because you no longer need to chase hidden feelings. You no longer need to decode someone's fear. You no longer need to prove that what you gave was valuable. They already know. That is why it hurts them now. The real question is not whether they feel the loss. They do. The real question is whether they will become someone capable of honoring what they lost. And until that is clear, keep choosing peace. Keep choosing truth. Keep choosing yourself. Because love should not require you to disappear in order for someone else to finally see you.